Hey, this is Devin, and I'm here today to teach you version control using Git in two parts. Let's go to part one. A few months back, I ran a live stream where I taught people how to use Git for version control on their projects. The stream went really well, except I went the full 2 hours and did not finish the workshop I was going through, so we didn't get to all of the exercises. I wanted to complete that workshop, so I've gone back and recorded those last 4 exercises we didn't get to in the live workshop. I also took the video from the live stream and I made a much tighter package that's much more watchable as a result. I'm going to split this into 2 parts. We're going to get started on the first part in just a moment, but before we do that, make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified when the second part goes live and you can watch that and be a Git master, or at least know the basics a little bit better. Let's go over to the computer and start learning Git. All right, let's kind of get started. The first thing I'm going to show you actually is in my browser here. What we're going to be using for this workshop is this really cool app called Git It. It is an Electron app. It runs just as a desktop app, and it's sort of an interactive Git tutorial. It walks you through a lot of the Git basics. It shows you how to create a Git repository for a project. It shows you how to add remotes and use GitHub and all that sort of stuff. It's the basic stuff, but it's a really good introductory tutorial. So the first step is to get that installed on your computer. If you look in the description of the video, there's a clickable link that will take you to the Git It GitHub page. So their GitHub repository for the Git It app. That is where you need to go to install. Oh, also the URL is on the screen. So if for any reason you can't get to the description, the URL should be part of the stream you're seeing right now. I am here at the Git It page, and what we're going to do here is on this second, well, I guess it's like the third navigation bar across the top here where you have commits, branches, packages, releases. We're going to go to releases, and that's going to bring us to this page. What we want to do is just grab the latest release for whatever operating system you're running. They have binaries for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. So you can just click on one of those. This is the latest release, 4.4.0. And so just download one of these zips that's appropriate for your operating system. Then you're going to unzip that, and you can either run that application where it sits after you unzip it, or if you want to move it somewhere else where you keep all your applications, go ahead and do that. But ultimately, we're going to unzip that and then run the executable or the app that's inside it. If you're having trouble getting Git It downloaded, it's not a huge deal. It's a cool application because it's going to check your work as you go, but it's not absolutely necessary. I'm going to have it open on my machine, and I'm basically going to read you and talk you through the exercises. So if you don't have it, you're still going to be able to participate. You just won't get graded live by the Git It app.
Quick question from Eric.
Sure.
Is there going to be Git from the command line? Yes, you can. Yes. When you're doing these exercises, you can use your command line. There is an option to use GitHub on desktop.
Well, I think what they do is they suggest you install the GitHub desktop app, but I think everything in this workshop assumes that you're going to be using it from the command line. So that's what we'll be working with tonight. But the GitHub desktop app is sort of an easy way to install the command line tools across different operating systems. So they recommend that you install it that way. Okay, so our first challenge, let me actually go back and show you what this looks like. This is what you're going to see when you first launch Git It, this section over here on the right of the screen. And it's basically just saying that this is a workshop about Git and GitHub. I'm going to go ahead and hit this Start Challenge 1 button, and that will take us into the challenges. So the first one is just to install Git and then configure it. So we're going to add your name and email address to your Git client. I want to talk a little bit about what Git is and why you would actually want to use it and what's cool about it. If you're not familiar with it at all, I like to think of it as an insurance policy for your code. So imagine you have a project, you want to make sure that you don't break that project in a way that you can never repair it again. What you might do is you might initialize it as a Git repo. What that does is it places all the files in that directory structure, wherever that directory lives. It places them inside control of Git. By doing that, you can work on a feature maybe. Your project has, it could have 5 files in it, or it could have 100 files in it. And one feature you build, it might touch only 1 file, or it might touch 10 different files. So you can work on that, and then you'll save your progress on those files, but then you can also commit those changes to your Git repository. And that sort of creates a snapshot. When I was talking to Bradley about it earlier, he said he thought of it as like a save state in a video game almost. Imagine you're playing some RPG or something, and you can go do a bunch of stuff, but then at some point you're like, I don't want to lose that progress I've made. So then you can go and save and create a save file that you can always get back to. If you don't have your project in version control, then you're stuck trying to undo manually the things you did to get back to the working state you were in. But if your project is in Git, and if you have major commits, your snapshots at intelligent points throughout your work, then you can just revert it back to that previous commit, and now everything works again. Another cool thing that Git does is it is distributed. That means there is no centralized source of truth for your repository. Your repository exists in many different places at the same time, and all of them are basically equal. So you might have a repository that you're working on with 4 other developers who may be in different parts of the world, who you may never actually interact with in person. You may also have all that on GitHub, which is basically like a host for Git repositories. And what that allows you to do is all of you can work independently on this same code base, and then later you can merge your changes together and you can push them to the remote, which might be GitHub, which is basically your host. And then when other people are going to work, they can pull any new changes down from that remote and integrate them into whatever progress they have working on whatever feature or bug fix or whatever they're working on. So it's really nice for collaboration too. Let's jump into our first step, which is installing Git. If you already have Git installed, you don't have to do this. If you can already go to the terminal or your command line or Git bash on Windows, if you already have access to those things and you can run Git from there, you don't need to do this step. If you don't...
Hey, Devin, I'll jump in.
Yeah, sure.
For a quick second, if you want to know, if you feel like you've already done all that and you want to make sure, at the bottom of this first example, there's a button that says verify. If you feel pretty confident you've already set up Git, click verify and it will let you know if you've actually set it up.
Yes, that's what grades this challenge. So if you think you've got it installed, you can just hit verify. Actually, that also verifies whether you've got these configurations set. So if you want to jump ahead, if you already have it installed, you can set the username and the user email, and then you can hit verify and it will check those things. If you just want to know if you have Git installed from the command line, you can run this git space -- version, and it should spit out the version of Git you're running. If it spits out anything, then you're good. Any version. If it spits out something crazy, then you're probably not good.
What version do you have?
What version do I have?
Yeah, let's see.
2.21.0. That's the version I'm on. It's probably not the latest. I find Git doesn't change super quickly. That's my experience anyway. Let's run through this really quick. They recommend we install Git by installing the GitHub desktop. You can click on that link if you have this downloaded. And if you don't, you can just go to this page desktop.github.com. And that will give you a big purple download button for Windows or Mac. If you happen to be here and you're using Linux, you will probably use your package manager, whatever package manager comes with your distro, to install Git. I'm not a Linux user, but I'm pretty sure that just about any distro you have will have Git included in the default package manager repositories, so you probably won't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it. I'm going to go ahead and do this on my Mac. This is going to be slightly different on Windows. On the Mac, I'm just going to get a zip file, and I can unzip that zip file and just drag the application into my applications folder, or I can just run it from wherever it is when it unzips. On Windows, I believe you get an actual executable that's an installer, and that will install the application for you. One thing you want to do if you're installing on Windows is you want to make sure you also install Git Bash, because that is, it's sort of, I think it's like a fake terminal that runs in Windows. You get those automatically on macOS and Linux. You already have a terminal emulator that you can run built into the operating system, but on Windows you don't. So Windows Git installs Git Bash. Just make sure that you install that as well. I think it is installed by default, so if you don't make any changes when you're running the installer, it will be installed. And on Windows, that's what you're going to use to enter your Git commands. On macOS, you can use terminal, or if you happen to have iTerm installed, you can use that. On Linux, you can just use whatever terminal emulator comes with your distro. I have this I have it downloaded now. I'm going to go ahead and unzip it. And I'm going to move it into my applications folder, because that is where I like to run things from. Okay, and I'm going to flip back over to Git It, because it has some pretty nice instructions on what to do from here. Here we go. Windows, use the Git shell for your terminal. And then on macOS, what we have to do is we have to open this GitHub desktop app. It's going to give us this big screen, welcome to GitHub Desktop, and ask us to sign in GitHub. I don't think we actually need to do that right now, but what we can do is go up to the menu. I think my menu is hidden from the stream, but I'm just going to the application menu. It says GitHub Desktop at the very top, dropping that down, and now I've got Install Command Line Tool. I am not going to do this because I already have Git installed, and I am not excited to see what sort of havoc that would wreak on my system. But you can click that and it will run you through an installer for the command line tools for Git.
Devin, Philip is saying, missed where to get the Windows Git Bash gizmo.
Oh, gotcha. Actually, you know, I may be getting this confused with the official Git window installer. Git shell should be installed when you install GitHub Desktop. Once you have Git installed, you're going to set your name and your email. These will be attached to any commits you make. That becomes important when you're collaborating on projects, because it's nice to be able to go through the log of commits and see who made various commits, so that you know who to blame for breaking the software. And it's pretty simple the way you do it. I'm also not really going to do this step because I've already got this stuff set up. But you would just do Git Config, and then you do -- global, and then user.name to start, and then in quotes, needs to be in quotes, you're going to put your name. If you're not familiar with terminal or command line, it does not matter that this is breaking across two lines. It will be a single command. My name will not have a carriage return in it or anything like that. This will just work. The next thing you're going to do is the second command to set your email. So you're going to do git config global user.email, just your email address here. I'm going to go ahead and verify this. Hopefully it verifies. Email added, name added, found Git installed. We should be good. So now we can come up here and go to our next challenge, making a repository. I touched on this a little bit earlier in the intro. It says a repository is a collection of related items. In our case, when writing software, it's a collection of files related to a software project. You can imagine it as a project folder with all the relevant files inside it. In fact, that's what it will look like on your computer. I feel like I do need to make the distinction that it's not a repository until you initialize Git, and that's what we're learning to do in this challenge. So just the folder where you have your project, it's not a repository in the Git sense until you take this action to make it one. Fortunately, it's a super easy action. The first thing it's going to have us do is to create a directory, and that directory is going to be called hello-world. So I'm going to do that over here. You'll do this in a terminal using mkdir, make directory, and then you put a space, and then you type in the name of your directory, whatever you want it to be. So we're going to do hello world with a dash. Okay. This is kind of a confusing thing about terminals. Sometimes you get no output, and that just means everything was okay. In this case, I can use ls to list the contents of the current directory I'm in. Oh, yeah, right, that's going to be a nightmare because I've got tons of stuff in here. But if we comb through all of this garbage, we'll see right here there is a directory called hello world. That's the one I just created. So the next thing I want to do, and Git It tells you to do this as well, we're going to cd into that directory. So we're going to change the directory our terminal is currently looking at. Right now it's looking at my projects directory. On your computer it's probably looking at a different directory, and that's perfectly okay. Now we're going to cd into that new directory, the hello world directory. And if you'll notice, I didn't type all that out. You can do this cool thing in terminal called tab completion. So if I type hello w, since I only have one directory that starts with those characters, I can hit tab and it will complete the rest for me. I don't have to type the rest. So then I can just press return. And now you can see, based on the prompt, that I am now inside that hello world directory. Warren says there is a handy Git cheat sheet extension on the Chrome Web Store. All right, so we're in the directory we're going to be working in. For the purposes of these exercises, this is going to be our project directory. We're building a fake project here just to sort of test out Git and see how it works. The first thing we're going to do, and this is the first thing you'll do with every project you'd like to have under Git version control, we're going to run git init, which will initialize a Git repository in this directory. This time we actually do get some output that tells us that we succeeded at doing the thing we wanted to do. Initialize empty Git repository in, and then it gives me the path. And if you'll notice, one cool thing is that I don't know a lot about the guts of Git, but I do know that everything happens in this .git directory. If I list the contents of this directory, you're not going to see that because it is a hidden directory. Since it starts with a dot, any file or directory in Linux, Unix that starts with a dot is understood to be hidden, so the operating system doesn't show it by default. If I do ls and then space -l, it will show me everything, including my hidden directories. Oh, it did not do that. No, I'm sorry, ls-a. There we go. A for all. So this is showing me everything. The dot is the current directory. That's meaningless. ... means I can go up a directory from here. That's also sort of meaningless. But .git is actually a hidden directory that's inside this project now. That was created when I ran git init. And one thing you might notice on my terminal, we're not going to go through how to do this tonight because it's sort of a different topic, but this portion after the directory name shows me that I'm in a Git repository. So that was not there before I ran git init, and you see it is there now, and it's also telling me the branch, which is a concept we'll touch on later. But basically this whole section says, yes, you are in a Git repository. Now, since I know that all of the Git magic happens inside that .git directory, that means if I decide I don't want this to be under Git version control anymore, I can just delete that directory and then it's no longer under version control. So the way I would do that, this is not part of the Git It exercises, but I'm just telling you this for your own edification. So rm, that's remove, and then I need to do -r, which is recursive, and f, which is force. And the way I understand this is it means recursive, we're deleting a directory and all of its contents, and force, that means we're just doing it, we don't care, we're just wiping everything out. So I'm going to do that for this .git directory. And watch, because the next prompt I get after I do this will not have that little Git section on it that says master and has the little cute guy and the branch icon. So watch that happen. Oh, or I could just do it wrong and it won't work. What have I done here?
You also you probably won't have the little icon of the GitHub squid thing, whatever that is.
yeah, you probably won't have the Octocat icon.
You might just see master in parentheses.
Yeah, you might see that. You might not see anything. Probably a lot of your default terminals are not going to tell you anything about the branch, and that's fine. You're still in a Git repository. Okay. This is failing, and I'm not sure why, and I'm not super inclined to figure it out right now because it's not part of what we're trying to do anyway. Actually, let's do it this way. I'm just going to do it the non-hacker way. Oh, I'll even do it in regular old Finder. Okay, let's go to my projects. Let's go to Hello World. Here's our Git directory. I'm just going to delete that thing. And now let's see what we've got over here. Okay, there you go. Now we are no longer in a Git repo. Now I'm just going to initialize it again. Okay, now we're back in Git. All right, so that is our second exercise here. This one wants us to select the directory we're working in, so it knows where to look to see if we did the work. So you just hit that, select directory.
Devin.
Yep.
Philip's saying, at least for me, your picture in the bottom left corner is hiding what you're typing in the console.
Hiding what I'm typing in the console. Let me see if I can find a better place for that.
I don't see it from my screen, but it's possible for some different views that it might be cutting it off.
Let's see if I can move it to the top right, and let's see if that helps any. Tell me how that works. I can move it around some more if we need to. So I'm going to select go to my projects directory first, and then select my Hello World. Now I'll click verify, and there we go. It verified. This is a Git repository. Now we are learning to commit. And this is what's going to create the snapshots I was talking about earlier. So these are the points that they're sort of inflection points for your code. You're saying, this is a state I would like to be able to get back to at some point. Here's what they're going to have us do. They're going to have us create a new file. There are lots of different ways we can do this. I'm going to show you how to do this entirely from the terminal, from the command line. So what we're going to do to create a new file is we're going to echo, and then we're just going to give it a string. So we need echo space, put in the string we want in the file. They're asking us to put in hello with an exclamation point. So we'll do that. Hello. Now I'm going to close my quote. What this would do, if I just hit return here, oh, actually, it's going to freak out because I did not escape. Because the exclamation point has a special use in my terminal, I have to escape it to tell the command line that I want to use an exclamation point instead of I want to do the magical thing that the exclamation point does. And I do that with a backslash. So that's going to make this work. But you'll see it's not actually going to do what I want it to do, and I'll explain why. All echo does is writes some text out to the console. You can see here's the command I've typed, and then it just spit this string right back at me, which is not very useful when you're trying to create a file. So I'm going to start with the same command. I did that by pressing the up arrow key, and that goes back to the previous command in my history. I can keep going back if I want to, or I can hit down and keep going through to more current history, but I just want the last one. And what I'm going to do with this, instead of just writing it out to the console, which is absolutely useless right now, I'm going to write it to a file. This caret, facing to the right, angle bracket, whatever you want to call it, means that I'm redirecting the output of this command to a file. And I'm going to redirect that to readme.txt. One thing to notice, you might not see this on your terminal, but my little Git tag here has turned yellow. That's a feature that I have added in my terminal that tells me there is something in the repository that Git doesn't know about. It's not added to Git yet, and we'll deal with that later. But that also tells us that the file exists, because otherwise what would have been added? So I'm just going to do ls to list the contents of the directory. And there we go. That is the file we wanted to create. So I know we have the file. I don't know if it has what we intended to put in it, and I can find out if it does using a little tool called cat. I don't know what it's supposed to stand for, so I don't have a great mnemonic to help you remember it. But if you type cat and then put a space and then put in a name of a text file, it's going to just print the contents of that text file out to your terminal. And that's what we wanted to put in it. So great. Now we've got a text file that says hello. That is the first step. Next step, they want us to check the status, add and commit changes. Next, check the status of your repository to find out if there have been changes. You know you have changed something, but does Git? Make sure you're still within your Hello World directory, and we're going to run this command, git space status. So let's go here, git space status. If you don't have this tag, or if you don't have anything like that, Git status is going to be your best friend. You're going to be running this thing all the time. This is telling us we're on the branch master. It's telling us we have no commits yet. We haven't committed anything. And we have one untracked file, and that is our readme.txt file. Let's move on to the next step. The next step is to add the file we just created so that it becomes part of the changes we will commit. Git add readme. And here's another case where I can use tab completion to be even lazier than I already am. Now you will notice my tag has turned red. For me, that means there are changes that are staged, which is the term that's used when you have added new changes but you haven't committed them yet. So they're staged but not committed. If you don't have that on your terminal, which you probably don't, you can also use Git Status, and you will see you're on branch master, which has not changed from before. You can see you have no commits yet, also hasn't changed. But now, instead of what we had before, if we can even get back there, yeah, before we had untracked files, readme.txt. Now instead we have changes to be committed. And it even helpfully tells you how to unstage the changes if you want, but this is what's staged. Right now we have a new file staged, and it is readme.txt. Next step, we're going to commit those changes. Here, we're committing just changes to one file. Like I said at the top of the video, you can commit changes to multiple files at the same time. So it's not like saving, where you're just saving one file, and then you may go over to another file and make changes and save it also. You're actually you can stage multiple files by adding them. So you can add all of them, and then you can run a commit, and that commit represents the current state of all of those files, so the changes that are captured by all of those files put together. If you revert back to that commit, you're not just reverting any one file, you're reverting all the files that have changed since then back to what they were at that point in history. So let's go ahead and get this committed, and we do that with git commit -m, which I think means message. This is your commit message. And our commit message is going to be created readme. Then we get this helpful output. that tells us the branch we're on. This is the commit hash, which is sort of a unique identifier for the commit. Here is our message, created README. It tells us we changed one file, we inserted one thing. This is the permissions for that file, which is not something we need to get super concerned with right now. Also probably not something I'm qualified to teach you. Now it wants us to make more changes. If you feel more comfortable in a GUI, you're welcome to open that README file in a text editor. I'm just going to keep rolling with the command line, and we're going to add another line through the command line. So I'm going to do echo. And what's a good second line? Oh, well, we did hello, so let's do world. That's really creative, right? Still need to escape my exclamation point. Last time I did the single angle bracket because I was creating a new file. This time I want to append to a file, so I need two of these. That's just kind of arbitrary. You just have to remember that if you want to use this. And I'm going to append to readme.txt. I'm going to clear out my terminal buffer here just so we can see a little better. Now let's cat this out so we can see what's in it. There we go. Now it has two lines. It has hello and it has world. Let's just, for the heck of it, run git status and see where we are. This is a little bit different. So I think last time when we had just started this README file, this said created instead of modified. We're still on branch master, and we have changes not staged for commit. And this wants us to look at a diff. A diff is probably what you would guess. It's just the difference between two states of a file or of multiple files. In this case, we only have one file that's under version control, so it's going to be the differences in the last commit we did and the current state of the file on our file system. So let's look at that. This is kind of hard to parse when you first see it, I think, but it's actually really helpful. This is helpfully telling us that we are looking at a diff. This means we've got two versions of this same file. We've got A and we've got B. A is going to be the commit. B is going to be the state on this file system, so the current state of the file. So it's got these two versions of the files we're looking at, and then it's telling you that we have added this line. That's the plus. We've added the line world to our text file. The way we get out of this diff is by pressing Q. Now, with what we just learned above, we're going to commit this latest change. So we're going to do the same thing again, which means we need to first stage it with add, and then we can commit it with commit. So let's focus on my terminal, git add, and we're going to add readme. I want to look at the status, just because I like to look at that pretty frequently. And now we can see the status is different than it was before. Before we had changes not staged for commit, now we have changes to be committed, so these changes are staged. I'm going to commit. I'm going to give it a message. You always want to give your commits a message, and in general you want to keep them pretty short. There's a reason for that. It has something to do with how many characters are displayed when you look at logs. And I'm not sure what the limitation is. It's pretty short though. It's like 35 or 45 characters, something like that. Just keep your commit messages pretty short. If you feel like you need to write a really long commit message, then maybe either you've done too much in one commit, or you can do multiple lines. You can do like a short description, and then you can go down a few lines and do a longer description. Actually, I'm going to demonstrate that now, even though I have no idea what I'm going to say about this commit of one word. Let's say added a word. And now if I were done, I could close that quote and press return, and it would just go. It would add the commit, that would be the commit message, and we'd be done. I'm not done though. So I'm going to take the quote out. I'll press return again. Now I can type my expanded description of this commit. So I'm going to say we added another word to the commit, because we're doing the Git It workshop and it wanted us to. We're not quite sure why yet, but I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. Okay, then when I close my quote and press return, that's going to be the end. We should be good to verify this change now. I'm going to give it the directory. Oh no, I don't need to do that. It's already got the directory. Okay, so we're just going to verify. Changes have been committed. Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our next exercise here. This one is going to have us create a GitHub account, and we're going to start using GitHub. Like I said before, GitHub is just sort of like a host for your Git repositories. If you already have a GitHub account, you don't need to create a new one. We'll just use it. But if you don't have one, you'll want to head over to github.com and create your account. I'm not actually going to run any of these commands because I've already done them, but they're pretty straightforward. I will type them in just to show you what they look like. The first thing they want you to do is to add your GitHub username. So you're going to do git config -- global user.username, and then you would just type in your username, your GitHub username here. Mine is raddevin, so that would be the command for me. I could run this and it probably won't break anything, but I'm just not going to tempt fate. But that's your command. You swap out raddevin for whatever your username is, and then press return. The next one is git config -- global user.username. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, this is just a check, right? We can see if I do have that set. Maybe I don't. Yeah, okay. It's just going to spit out whatever your setting is in your config, and mine is raddevin. I'm just going to go ahead and verify here, and it looks like we're good. One thing they're pointing out here in the tips is to make sure you are using user.username. We used user.name earlier, which is a different configuration option.
I noticed that.
Yeah. There's user.name and then there's user.username. User.name is just like literally your name. And then user.username is your GitHub username. So don't mix those two up. Although if you accidentally put your username in user.name, then you could run git config -- global user.name and set it again. It's not the end of the world. You don't want to, over a long term, confuse those two. Thanks for joining me for part 1 of the Git It workshop. We're going to be rolling right into the next part in next week's video. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and I guess ring the bell or whatever people do on YouTube these days to make sure that you get notified of that next video as soon as it goes live. Until then, may your source code always be safe and you along with it. Talk to you in the next one.